Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com mailbag podcast presented by Blue Water Climate Control with Austin Price and Rob Lewis. I'm glad to have you along with us on this Thursday. Hope everybody's doing well as the Vols get ready to take on Georgia. We'll jump right into the questions because we have questions about a variety of topics and particularly a lot of questions about Georgia. So we'll jump right into them tonight. Again, you can check out our friends at BlueWaterClimateControl.com. Check them out on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate. Hard Hat Vol wants to know, Rob Lewis, what playmaker outside of George Pickens do Tennessee fans need to be most concerned with from the Bulldogs?
I think Zamir White looks pretty solid to me, but the guy that really impressed me the other night was, not surprisingly, given the numbers he put up, was Kearis Jackson. Somebody that I didn't really know anything about. He burns Auburn for, several big plays. 9 catches, 147 yards, and that's a guy that, again, everybody has their eye on Pickens, but Pickens just had 2 catches for 26 yards in that game. He had the touchdown, but Jackson, they didn't have an answer for him.
Yeah, I thought Jackson played really well, too. I'm with you on Zamir White, too. I just think that, with Cook maybe not being able to go Austin, it's going to be a whole lot of Zamir White in the backfield. And look, he looks like a guy who's finally recovered from an ACL. He was all world coming out of high school. Everybody wanted him. He had the ACL tear that set him back significantly. It's starting to look like he's rounding into form a little bit as a running back. Look, I'm not saying he's Todd Gurley or some of those guys that they've had previously, but he's a good looking back who I think is going to continue to grow in their offense.
Yeah, I agree. He looks better than he has looked. But you're right. He came in with the hype that he was going to be every bit as Nick Chubb or Todd Gurley or Noshawn Moreno. I don't think he's to this point. But yeah, he is the best back they have. They're going to rely on him heavily. He's tough to tackle. He's a bigger back. I think Tennessee's going to have to tackle well. I think this could be paramount in this game, especially early on. Is being able to tackle and not allow yards after contact.
Yeah, I think that's a big stat in this game too. You cannot, Rob, you can't let a guy, if it's third and 3 and you got him hemmed up back there, you can't let him squirt out and get that short yardage first down. You're going to, when the opportunity's there to make a play, you got to tackle. And I'll say this about Tennessee. Through 2 games, they've tackled pretty well for a team that didn't hit a whole lot in the preseason. I was expecting the tackling to be significantly worse. And quite frankly, they've tackled a lot better than some other teams I've watched. Florida in particular, I don't think has tackled very well at all in 2 games. I think Tennessee's been pretty solid tackling, Rob.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have much to add other than I'm with you. I would have looked for that to have been, something that popped up as, I don't know about a glaring issue, but something that they had problems with. And to that, I'm not saying they've been perfect, but, you just you hadn't seen any big busts that would result in missed tackles.
Yeah. All right, let's go to volunteer to 87. What commits and targets were in Knoxville on Saturday? I know of Mims and Brooks, assuming there were more than 2 people, though. Now that I've learned from your UGA counterpart that Dwight Freeney and Ed Reed would have had to redshirt at Georgia due to their defensive depth, any guess as to what the closest thing to a weakness is for their defense? I'm assuming we'll take some deep shots, but wondering what else we might try to attack, assuming it's not a downpour. I think that one area where Tennessee may try to attack is in the flat. I think if you go back and look
out in space,
I think this sometimes Jeremy Pruitt's defense or the foundation that this defense is built on, whether it's Pruitt's, whether it's Nick Saban's, whether it's Kirby, whatever that tree is, sometimes in some calls they can get a guy out in space, not in a screen, but a guy out in the flat, a check down, a rail route, that type of thing. I think that's an area where Tennessee will try to attack a little bit. Austin, what do you say on the commits and targets in town? Anybody besides those 2 of note?
Just those 2.
Which is not surprising given the fact that, they're on their own dime and they can't hang out with coaches and go to the complex and get tours and that type of thing, right?
Yeah, Tennessee trying to get, and we'll continue to try to get kids to come in town, but some kids just can't afford to come in town. Some kids, it doesn't work out, from a logistical standpoint, having a ride, those type of things. Brooks came in town. Remember, he's got family up here. And he told me he did not go to the game. He just kind of hung out, did hang out with Amarius some. But those 2 were the only 2.
All right, let's go to LF Vol. 2 questions. Did you learn who the bust was when JG got blown up on the wide receiver screen? against Missouri. And in the Monday night chat from Austin's comments on Green, sounds like he doesn't think that Tennessee leads for any of the 4 players who are head-to-head with Georgia against TID, Smile Munden, Nyland Green, Mims. Is that accurate, Austin?
No, I'm going to say no. That's not accurate.
It's not accurate, but you're not divulging any more than that. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think that they are better than 50%, even if it's 51. I think they got coming out of the weekend, I think they've got maybe a fraction of a lead for Amarius Mims. That can easily change Saturday, though.
Right, because he's going to be in Athens. And again,
but he is going to be in Athens and get to watch the Vols play. So, I mean, like, I think, choosing to do the games he did, and he could have easily went to Georgia,
Auburn,
for the Auburn game, but the way it looked at it and decided, no, I'm going to go to Tennessee, Missouri, and then, Tennessee, Georgia.
Yes. But I mean, I think on Nyland Green, I think distance is a factor because of those around Nyland Green would like for him to stay close to home, and his hometown and Athens is about 30 minutes apart. I think that's there. I think with TID, it just depends on what day it is.
Yeah, that kid's all over the map, man.
Right.
And I like that kid, okay? Don't get me wrong. I like the kid.
Right.
He's a nice kid, but he is truly all over the map, and has been.
Yeah. As for his first question about who the bust was on, I'm not sure, Rob, that bust wasn't on JG, because I don't know if that's an RPO or what it was, but they could have about been called for a lineman downfield on that play. Looks like if he hands it off, with the way the offensive linemen are going, there's a run to the left where there's a hole there. So I don't know if he's supposed to read something on an RPO or what he was doing. It looks like a right tackle on that play doesn't block anybody, but the right tackle was firing off left like he was going to run block. So I don't know what the call was there, if that was an RPO and that was a misread by Jared, or if that was a bust up front by an offensive lineman.
It's pretty simply to Jared. It's either Jared or the right tackle just completely went the wrong way, because it's not like he missed the guy. I mean, he didn't go after him.
Yeah, he didn't even attempt to go after him. That's for sure. So I don't know the answer to that question. Galilee wants to know, Carvin, Gray, Thomas, Banks, and Small are all contributing to this year's team. Can you find another Vol team that had more Memphis players playing a role? Well, I mean, Omari Thomas has played about 5 snaps, right, Rob? 10 snaps?
He has played 7 snaps, I believe.
7 snaps in 2 games, and Jabari Smalls played 3 snaps in 2 games.
6. 3 carries.
Okay, so put that in there that they have played early on, but we'll see how. And I think they're going to grow in their role, but they're not locked in as huge contributors to this point. But to answer your question, you probably got to go back to the early 90s and looking at some guys who contributed pretty heavily. About 93, 94 in there, at Reggie Ingram, at Corey Stone, who was a defensive lineman, Torrey Noel, who was a safety, John Sartell was a tight end on that team who was playing,
Legend.
and Tom Hutton was the punter on that team. So there's 5 guys there that were pretty significant contributors. Go ahead.
I was going to say, with that said, and you're right, number of plays they've not played, but I mean, Jabari did get a nice first round run in the middle of the football game, not in junk time.
Right.
Omari had a couple of nice plays in the middle of the football game. So they're not playing a ton, but what they're asking them to do, they've been able to contribute, which I think says a lot about, both kids. And specifically, I think says a lot about Jeremy's insistence when he first took the job to make Memphis a priority.
Oh, and I'm not taking anything away from them at all. I mean, and I think they're going to contribute more and more as they go forward. The 5 guys I mentioned from the 90s were guys who were in the starting lineup, or were, playing, a lot of snaps. And by the end of the season, I think that might be the case with this group as well. Look, I think Jeremy's priority in Memphis and repairing a lot of broken relationships there, Rob, that Butch Jones severed when he basically said, I'm not going to recruit Memphis, is really good work on the recruiting front and working relationships with Aaron Hayden and people in Memphis that are significant and important in terms of being in the landscape of prep athletics out there. And then you are getting contributions from guys that's getting people's attention. Eric Gray's performance opens eyes up to playmakers in Memphis. You
And then
know,
ask that question in 2 or 3 years, and it might be,
Oh,
more than you can ever remember.
yeah, I think a year from now, then it's probably the greatest contributions from the city of Memphis and any one team that Tennessee's had. Because I think Bryson Easton's going to play Austin. I think those Whitehaven trio guys are going to contribute and be factors. Carvin's going to be back. All these guys that are playing right now are going to be back and playing a bigger role. So I think Memphis is going to be huge for Tennessee, and they better win in recruiting in Memphis in 22, right, Austin? Because that's where
right.
that's where the talent in Tennessee, a lot of the talent in Tennessee in 22 is in Memphis. All right, let's go to Volquest. What seniors ultimately benefit the most from having this year uncounted, and meaning it doesn't count as your year of eligibility? Who could that benefit the most?
You know, looking across the board, you know, that's hard because they're still relatively young. You know, I mean, Josh Palmer, I think, still has not played a ton of football. You know, I mean, you go back, he played 1 year of high school ball, and then, you know, the previous staff, took a flyer on him when they didn't land T. Higgins and some of those guys, and you know, he's turned out to be a good hit, and developed nicely, but I think could use another year. What does Princeton Fant look like a year from now? Right now, he can't play 75 snaps on offense. That's why you see Jacob Warren out there a lot. But what's he look like a year from now? Because he is an athletic mismatch, I think, just because he's a really good athlete.
I just think, I don't think you're going to see as many kids return as some people assume. And I know, Brent, you've talked about this too, but any of those guys that have a snowball's chance ending up even on a practice squad are going to leave. Will Matthew Butler have a chance to, end up on somebody's practice squad or your 54-man roster? I think Palmer would. Given his measurables. I think obviously you'll see some guys do it, but I'll be surprised if it's more than a handful.
See, I think if for those guys, I would look to want to come back. One, depending on where you're at as far as trying to, get a secondary degree or a master's or whatever else, that could help. And then two, you only gonna play football for so long. So would you rather get another year in here? It's something you're going to play a lot, a team you're going to play a lot for, or would you rather go and potentially be on a practice squad making whatever they make?
I would say option B.
Yeah, I would think the practice.
Of the guys.
I would think because one, they're ready to get out of school and not have to deal with the academic life, and two, the longer they wait, the less they're, the older they get. Sometimes the harder that it is for those guys to make it. I think a couple guys that are intriguing. I think Deandre Johnson goes. Okay, I don't think he would come back, but that one would be interesting. If he flashes and then kind of disappears here. Now, if he goes on and does what he's doing right now, obviously he's gonna go ahead and go because somebody's going to take a flyer on that because of that position. But he doesn't have a lot of reps under his belt. Okay, another guy that's getting to play a lot of reps but hasn't played a lot of football, much to your Josh Palmer comparison, is a guy like Kenneth George Jr. Would it behoove him to potentially come back for another year? Because here's a guy who basically didn't play in high school at all, played a little bit in JUCO, and then here he is at Tennessee. Could that be a guy?
In some instances, Brent, it's not gonna behoove Tennessee for some of these kids to come back.
Exactly.
A guy like Keyshawn Lawrence, Jeremy's talking about keeping him at corner. Eventually, talent should take over, and Keyshawn, in theory, would pass a guy like Kenneth George Jr.
Agreed. Yep, you're exactly right. You're exactly right on that, and that's where the thing is, it's not just, everybody says another year. They might not be asked to have another year. Then if, the other year might have to be at a transfer situation, might not be at the school that they're at if they want to play college football for another year. Vols have shown in spurts they can go really fast if they want to. Do you think Tennessee goes fast in this Georgia game? I kind of like their up-tempo stuff. I think they might flirt with it and see what it looks like against Georgia.
Got to get some first down. Got to be able to get first downs, though.
Yep.
I think that would be the key.
Can't be in 3rd and 11, that's for sure, if you're going to have a chance at that. But I think it's been effective for Tennessee when they've gotten in it, and when they've gotten in a rhythm when they've been able to win on first down. So, I think it'll be in the playbook to look at this week. I'm not saying they'll definitely do it, but what we know is both these defenses on both sides of the ball, Austin, like to sub a lot of people. They like to sub package. Look, they all came from the Nick Saban tree, who absolutely hates hurry up offenses because it doesn't give him a chance to put on a specific package for a specific down and distance. So if they think that can play to an advantage, they may try to, they may flirt that out there and see how Georgia reacts to that, for sure. Vol since 1996 wants to know, will Cheney get a contract extension? And if not, who would they take a look at to take over for the OC position? I don't have any idea where Jeremy Pruitt would go with there. I think he would like Jim Cheney to hang around and call plays for a few more years.
Jim Cheney will have a job here as long as Jim Cheney wants a job here.
I think they're a good fit, personally, personality-wise. I
think Jeremy stays out of his hair outside of the times where Jim gets a little pass happy, and then you all of a sudden see them run like 9 straight plays, and I'm sure that's, hey, can we not run the ball, Jim?
Yeah. But otherwise, I think they get along fine. I think Jeremy likes Jim being the head coach of his offense. So I think as long as Jim wants to stay here, I'm with you, Austin. He's got a job here. All right, is Bennett the fourth this year's Kyle Trask? Or is Tennessee walking into another game where we can't handle a backup quarterback? Or is this different because we have film?
No, he's not. I don't think he's Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask was never fourth on the depth chart with, going into a football season. Then, guy opts out.
He was recruited by an SEC school coming out of high school. Also.
Yeah, I think he's more like Joe Tereshinski, but because but Tereshinski never had the offensive line this kid has. I do think that Tereshinski had better running backs. He did not have the wide receivers at Georgia at that point. George Pickens is a stud, and so I think Tennessee will have their hands full. They've got to find a way to get home and get to Stetson Bennett, because if you give him time, the kid still throws it good enough to where he can pick you apart.
AP, if it's the early 90s or it's the 90s, you've got to go to Georgia Tech as Georgia's head coach and get a win. Are you rolling with Joe Cox or JT3?
Joe Cox.
Ball fan 0316 wants to know, when looking at this matchup, what intrigues you the most that hasn't been there the last few years? Simple line of scrimmage. I don't think Tennessee was on par with Georgia in the line of scrimmage the last couple of years. I think Tennessee's much closer to being there this year. I'm not saying they are there, but I think they're much more competitive in the line of scrimmage than they've been the last couple of years.
I think that's on the OL, where Tennessee may have a couple first round picks on the offensive line. And
I was looking at kind of like comparisons, like Tennessee's O-line to Georgia's D-line, Tennessee's receivers to Georgia's secondary. I'm not sure Tennessee has the edge in anything, but I think there's a lot of pushes. Like, whereas a year ago, there were no pushes. It was Georgia across the board. And even where areas where Georgia may be fractionally better, it's not by some wide margin. Like they're better by a little bit. And it's not something that Tennessee can't overcome with, coaching or technique come Saturday.
Yeah, but I think it starts in the line of scrimmage. But I agree with you. I think they're much closer to being competitive across the board, which is what you want in your third year with a coach in a rebuilding job. That's what he was hired to do, was to try to catch and get closer to the teams they're chasing. And I think they are closer to Georgia talent-wise than they have been in previous years. All right, P Stone 18 wants to know, observation. I'd love a comment on the jumbo package. I know it's Cade slid over to tight end on the left side. So it was Cade, Wanye, and Trey. Man, that's a line for short yardage situations to run behind. And then questions. What's your biggest surprise so far through 2 games? Give one overreaction hot take for the remainder of the season on current team or recruiting. So what's your biggest surprise through 2 games thus far?
I don't know that anything has really blown me away. Maybe JG not having a turnover in 2 games, but that's not exactly, DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak or anything. I expected them to be able to run the football. They have. I expected them to be, against the South Carolina and Missouris of the world. So I don't know that it's kind of been chalk.
I think JG's lack of turnovers certainly is there. On the negative side, I think Brent Samiglia has been, that surprised me that he's missed 2 already this year. And
Paxton Brooks surprised me.
Just in terms of how he's punted it?
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging almost 42 a kick, and and several of those in the South Carolina game, he was just trying to pin them inside the 20.
Yeah. And I know everybody wants to try to tout, the Deandre Johnson stuff. He's played better than I expected him to play.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
I wasn't sure even that he would start, over Roman Harrison.
yeah. I mean, I thought he might show up in week 1, but I didn't think he would do anything kind of 2 weeks in a row.
The biggest disappointment would be for me, would be Roman Harrison.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not been a factor at all.
Yeah, and he didn't think he got more opportunities in the Missouri game, and I didn't think he showed up much when you rewatch that game. I didn't see him be a factor there.
He's in danger of losing snaps to Tyler, I would think.
Yes, I would agree with that too. All right, overreaction hot take for remainder of the season. I'm not real sure where to go with that or in recruiting. I don't really have an answer for a hot take. I don't see that. So sorry, I don't have a whole lot for you.
I think Ball's pulling upset. Either this one, Bama, or Florida.
You think they get one of the 3? That's your hot take?
I think Florida is the most likely.
Okay.
My hot take is if Tennessee gets Amarius Mims, they're going to get Nyland Green.
Wow. All right. So there's 2 hot takes for you. Cedar Bluff Vol wants to know for Rob, assuming that Smith does indeed pick Auburn, where does the staff turn? Is Hutley Hatfield essentially last name on the board as of today, given your recent statement of being out of a couple other ones? Any new names to watch? Potential 22 reclassification to 21 other than Hatfield?
Nope. Right now, I mean, it's a question I'm asking myself and asking others. I mean, and Hatfield still has to reclassify, which I think he will do sometime in the winter or early spring. But I think Tennessee's going to be, kind of pounding the bushes, and I would bet a lot of money that if they did miss on Smith, that you'll see them take a grad transfer or 2.
All right. Logan Bartlett wants to know, can you guys comment on Pruitt maturing or changing from year 1 or the beginning of last year in regard to game week preparation? Yeah, I don't know that he's changed a whole lot. I think the biggest change is that his players understand how to prepare. And so I think he has probably a little bit more confidence in his players' preparations, probably goes into games with more confidence. I don't think he's changed his aggressiveness in terms of how he prepares or how he coaches in games, whether it's going forward on 4th down or, an onside kick here or things that we've seen him do. But I think the biggest change from him from, year 1 and the first part of year 2 is the fact that his team understands the way that they want to practice and the way they need to go about preparing. You just don't hear him. You don't see him angry a lot of, after practice anymore or openly critical of his kids after practice, because I think he feels like they know how to prepare each way. So I think that's helped relax him a little bit.
I think he's a million times better with the media. I mean, I think he's just so much more comfortable in his own skin. He shows some personality. I mean, he's not a comedian, but now, he's you can see he's got a sense of humor occasionally. He'll crack some jokes and just comes across as a genuine dude. I think that's what Tennessee fans appreciate about him and kind of identify with. Maybe the subject noun agreement or verb isn't always there, but Tennessee fans, I think, like the fact that he's a genuine guy as opposed to the last dude who was just all about the soundbite.
Deshaun 13, where do you see Georgia attacking Tennessee? I think Georgia's going to try to go over top. I think they're going to try to hit some big stuff early. I think they're going to be aggressive. If it's not just a monsoon, I think they're going to be aggressive and try to challenge Tennessee's secondary. That doesn't mean they're not going to run the ball, but I think they're going to take some shots early. That's my opinion, based on the fact that Tennessee's given up some big plays.
I think especially off play action. I mean, if they're able to run the ball with effectively, and Tennessee's got to stack the box, I'd 100% think that you're exactly right, Over. Especially because Missouri did it, pretty successfully. They didn't have anybody like Pickens or Jackson.
No, they did not, and those two can certainly play and can give Tennessee some fits, and it will be interesting to see how Tennessee's corners play against those two guys if they go out and play man-to-man against them. Let's see here. Can you explain this year's eligibility? Do coaches, players pick and choose whether this year counts for the specific player? Example, Amari Thomas for a year, obviously. Brandon Kennedy his last year. Does he have an option, or is that up to the coaches? and him also with the NFL draft. Look, it's up to the players and the coaches, as we talked about earlier. Not every kid's going to have an opportunity to come back around the country for an extra year. Some of them are going to be asked and told to move on, and not every kid's going to want to come back. Now, if you're an underclassman, the year doesn't count and it doesn't matter. But for juniors and seniors, those will be decisions you have to make in regards to the NFL draft. If you're an underclassman that way, who's eligible for the draft there, and then a senior, you got to decide if you want to keep playing football, if you want to go to the draft, or if you're ready to hang up your cleats and be done with it. So that's up to the kids to decide, and obviously the coach has to want them back as well. All right, Austin, do you mind breaking down the relationship between Pruitt and Kirby? You alluded to it in the podcast on Tuesday. I've heard conflicting things like they're close, and then on the flip side that they don't like each other too much. I believe CBS shared the story that Pruitt drove Kirby's wife to the hospital when she was having twins. What's the insight there, Austin Price?
That's true. He did drive her. That's called being a good human being. I mean, like, that don't mean that they are like bosom buddies. Like I said, when Coach Pruitt made the comment about the golf analogy used, saying that Kirby never loses the ball in the woods, he always finds his ball in the woods. Kirby he took offense to that. He came right back on Twitter and kind of had his jab back. And if they're in the same room, much like a lot of these guys, they'll be cordial with one another and talk, but they're not friends. They're not calling each other. They're not making each other's Christmas card list.
Well, I think what people don't understand about those guys, particularly when it comes to Tennessee and Georgia, they're competing against. It's not just that they're competing against each other one day out of the year or 1 week out of the year where they're preparing to play. They're competing against each other 365 days a year in recruiting. And look, it's as heated, Rob Lewis, as it's ever been in that regard. So it's hard to be buddies, when all's fair in love and recruiting. And they're going after each other in recruiting. Those two programs are going after each other.
And there's different degrees of it, but schools negatively recruit. I mean, that could be, talking about the culture of a program on one end, or just talking about the depth chart of a program on one end.
Think about it. They're both at Alabama together. That highlighted by the story of him taking Kirby's wife to the hospital when they had the baby. But then Jeremy goes on his own to Florida State as a DC, wins a national title there, then goes to Kirby's alma mater, Georgia, and pushes them to be better. Like pushes them to build an indoor, pushes them to do things that would make them better. Now, and you believe what you want on the whole he and Mark Richt type stuff, but the point is like, Kirby ends up coming back in there. Jeremy goes back and takes Kirby's spot at Alabama, and of course eventually comes here. So those guys have always kind of competed with or around each other. And then you throw in the fact that, Jeremy ain't exactly fond of the dogs, okay? All the people down there in Athens and Jeremy ain't exactly like, they're definitely not on each other's Christmas cards list. So, I think when you add Kirby to that mix, again, it's not like they hate each other. I don't think that to be the case, but they're not buddies.
All right, couple of things as we get out the door here. Austin, for you, a couple of recruiting questions. TID, all Georgia, we've already talked about that. Is Weaver a priority? Take that one. And will the next commit weigh north of 3 Benjamins? That's 300 pounds.
Jalen Weaver, I don't think is doing anything anytime soon. So thus, that plays into Tennessee's hands. If he wanted to do something right now, I don't know. Later, I think potentially yes. North of 300 pounds, I don't know. I guess it depends.
There you go.
I mean, it depends. It depends if anybody commits before Mims commits, and depends if Mims picks Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily that Amarius Mims will be the next person to commit. He may be, but there's a couple of guys that have been, going back and forth about what they may do, and so
who knows what that looks like. All right. UT Vol fan 29. Why is Tennessee having so many issues recruiting top-level pass rushers and DB even after changing the defensive staff around some? Seems like we're struggling in those two areas. I think the DB thing's pretty interesting. I don't know. I don't know if this, some of those West Coast kids that first year, we've talked about that a million times. That was a pipe dream. Nyland Green is hard to beat. Distance from home there with Georgia. I think there's some of that's worked against Tennessee a great deal. And then there's some others they just haven't been able to get in on.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have Demarius McGee ranked one way. The other side has him ranked far higher. Who's right? Who knows? Only time will tell. But if you go off of that theory, the other guys have him ranked as a top 100 player. So he would be in theory a top 100 player.
And your boy Chad Simmons is going to see him this week, so that might change.
That's right. Chad's taking over the state of Florida, so maybe after watching him practice and run around, watching some new tape, McGee ends up getting a bump whenever they come out with new rankings.
All right, last question here. How would you attack Georgia's offense if you were Pruitt and Derek Ansley, Rob Lewis?
Does he mean
how would you attack Georgia's offense if you were playing defense for Tennessee?
I mean, I'm making the former walk-on make some throws. If I'm there, and I know he's got some big time targets outside, but I'm taking chances because I think Tennessee is sound in the front seven, but I don't know that they're just lining up and stonewalling Georgia. So I'm taking some chances. I'm stacking the box. I'm sending people, and I'm making the former walk-on throw some dimes.
I mean, Austin, do you think it's important that Tennessee not let Stetson Bennett out off the edge? I thought he threw the ball rolling out on the move pretty good, but you've mentioned this a couple of times. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Would they be better served corralling him instead of just maybe coming a gap up the middle blitzes, up the middle pressures?
Yeah, keeping him in the pocket. I agree. You keep him in the pocket, and the thing is, Georgia's offensive line, because he's not the biggest guy in the world, and it's a little bit overblown because you look and see Russell Wilson, he plays in the pocket. Drew Brees plays in the pocket.
Okay.
But I mean, like at the same time, Georgia's offensive line, they are some big dudes, and they're tall, and so yeah, I mean, I would definitely keep him in the pocket.
Yeah, I thought he got going in that Auburn game by being able to throw on the move. I thought that's kind of how he got his rhythm going in that game. So we'll see if Tennessee can keep him corralled up in there and how they can play that. So big game, big opportunity for Tennessee. Should be a lot of fun. We'll continue to break it down, continue to talk about it the rest of the week here and get you ready for Tennessee and Georgia in Athens at 3:30. Hey, I want to remind you about our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. If you're have heating and air needs, you need to give them a call at 865-299-2290, or you can check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. You can book an appointment online. They can come out and give you a tune-up to your system. If you're having issues with your system, they'll send a technician out to evaluate what you need and break down exactly what you need. They have financing options for you, everything you need to make your home comfortable, whether it's cold in the winter or warm in the summer, whatever you need. Blue Water Climate Control can do it for you. So check them out online or check them out on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate. That's going to do it for this mailbag edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.